Oh, it says we're live. How about that?
Yay, we're live. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Perfect.
Live. I don't know what that means. My other page says the presentation will start within 60 seconds. So I've started, but for some reason I'm not seeing it. We do have some folks coming in. Good morning. This is Tim Patterson, Trade Show Guy, and this is a system that does not work flawlessly, but when it works, it's really sweet. I think the issue is the Webinar Jam talks to Google Hangouts, and it often doesn't do exactly what I wanted to do. So, all right. So, and now I'm getting echoes in, so I'm taking my headphones off. I want to see if I can get back to me. How do I do that?
I will stop sharing.
You'll stop sharing?
Yes.
And then you're on. So if I hide your participants, and then that's me, I should be coming up on the screen. Hello, everybody. There's a little delay on the internet. You know, the internet kind of is slow. So anyway, that's Lisa.
Hi there.
And I'm thinking, how do I get me?
How's that?
You're there. For some reason, don't want to leave the call. Do I want to share?
No, don't leave the call.
No, I don't want to leave the call.
Don't leave us.
No, I don't want the cameraman. There's so many little playing things you can do with the our guest has just joined. Hide their audio and video from my broadcast. Now, why are we doing that? Okay. Well, we'll stop messing around. We'll just get to it. All right. Anyway, that's Lisa on your screen. This is Tim Patterson of Trade Show Guy Exhibits in Salem, Oregon, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar called Developing Content to Cut Through Internet Noise, featuring Lisa Apolinski of Three Dog Right. Lisa and I met back in November at the Shared Knowledge University at Classic Exhibits in Milwaukee, Oregon. And Trade Show Guy Exhibits, we work with the Classic, but we're a full-service exhibit house aimed at small to medium-sized businesses. We provide consulting and marketing along with best-in-class exhibit booths, working with a variety of exhibit manufacturers and designers as needed. You can find me online. Just look for Trade Show Guy. I have a blog called TradeshowGuyBlog.com, and I'm all over like social media, so it's a lot of fun. If you want to share your screen, Lisa, that would probably be the thing to do. That way we can see the beginning of your thing.
All right, let me start it again. And hopefully you can see this. Tim, can you just confirm that
I can see that? Yes, I can, and I do see it coming across. If you, I want to figure out one thing before we move on, and that is how do I get my face back on the screen? Because I think I have figured it out now. If you give me just a second, I'm going to change that, and that should put me back on the screen. Do you see me?
Hold on. Sorry, I got to go back to it.
You got to go back to it, huh? There we go. Yes, it's working. All right. I've got it pulled up. Okay, so I'm going to go back to you. Okay, and you are now showing
Am I driving?
your screen. It's working. It's working perfectly. We just got to know where the gear shift is, I think.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, the presentation today called Developing Content That Cuts Through the Internet Noise, and this is very similar to what Lisa presented at the Shared Knowledge University with Classic Exhibits, and I really enjoyed the presentation. I learned a lot, even though I thought, hey, I know quite a bit about this developing content stuff, but Lisa's very sharp and had some great stuff, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today, Lisa. So if you want to take it away, that's all the introduction I've got.
Great, and that's perfect. So thank you so much for joining this webinar. As Tim said, we met in November at Shared Knowledge University. I've actually been following Tim for quite some time, reading his blog, so I was, excited to be asked to discuss what I consider to be, one of the topics that is becoming really prevalent for companies. This is something that I am asked to speak on, help with, and it's something that I also struggle with. So if you are in this boat where you are developing content, you're putting it out, and you're not getting the same engagement that you used to, we are all in the same boat together. This is a phenomenon that's happening across the board. What I can tell you is that I would love to be able to fix your problem in an hour webinar. That is probably not going to happen, but I will go through the history of why we're in this situation, some of the things you should be looking at and developing as you're going through your content strategy, and then some common pitfalls that I have seen with organizations that I work with that will help you to maybe avoid those. Tim, since I have this as a full screen right now, if there are questions, and I really want this to be interactive, so if there are questions, type them in the chat box. Tim can interrupt me, and we can stop and answer any questions as we go, because you probably will have a lot of them, and I'm totally okay with that. So my name is Lisa Apolinski. I am the founder and CEO of Three Dog Right. We are a digital consulting agency. We provide consulting for digital content, digital engagement, technology, data use, training, anything that allows you to engage and learn about your customers in the digital space, we help with. So it's kind of encompassing. And I have been doing traditional marketing and now digital marketing for, gosh, I'd say about 16 years. Content definitely has changed. The way we engage with our prospects and our customers has changed significantly. It is still changing, and I think that's why a lot of you are on this webinar, because things that worked even 6 months or a year ago are not working, and it's very, very frustrating when you're trying to continue to grow your business, continue to connect with your customers, and things are not going the way you've seen them, and it can be very, very disheartening. So I am right there with you. Our webinar, if anyone's attended any of my lectures or webinars, I'd like to give a little bit of a roadmap so we have an idea of where we're going. First, we're going to talk about what's happening right now with online content. And when I say online content, I am talking about everything that you can use to engage and share your story with your customers and prospects. And that includes, but is not limited to, website, blogs, press releases, white pages, social platforms, video, audio, webinars, photos, tweets, whatever you're using to try to engage with your customers and get them to want to learn more about your products and services. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at the components of strong content, and then we're going to look at some of the common pitfalls of content development. And just as a quick aside, I'm going to be using, for this webinar, I'm going to be using my own examples because I am in the middle of this. I am building a new website. And when I say I am building it, I mean I personally am building a new website. And I am having to go through the same types of issues and the same types of exercises that I'm going to be asking you to do. So, you know, I will be using my own examples and things that I'm struggling with. And, you know, if you have questions, or if you're just like, hey, I'm right there with you, you know, please share. We're happy to hear from you. Okay, so let's talk about how we kind of got into this content ridiculousness, I'd like to call it. There's a lot of content out there, and we're fast becoming in a digital space, too much content, more content than we can actually handle. And I wanted to put some of these stats up. I used these stats in November. They're still very relevant. They haven't changed dramatically, so just bear with me. Content marketing costs 60% less than traditional marketing. So clearly it's very attractive, especially as we're cutting our budgets. And it generates more than 3 times the number of leads as traditional marketing. So again, you're spending less and you're getting more leads. Because of that, there's nearly 27 million new pages of content created every single day. And Americans already are spending almost 10 hours reading and consuming that content. And if things are going the way that we believe they're going, with this 27 million new pages of content every single day, online content will double every 9 to 12 months. And it's closer to the 12-month mark right now, but I believe it will be closing in on 9 months, probably the next year or two. So every 9 months, the size of the internet and the content that's out there doubles. And by 2020, the internet's going to be 5 times the size it is today. Okay? So that's a lot of content. And if we look at what's happening with the consumption of content, and this is something that Mark Schaefer has been talking about for at least 2 years, and we are well into this, which is why so many people are struggling at this point. We are basically in content shock. There is so much content available, and we only have so many hours in the day that we can actually read and consume the content. So because of that, even if you have the best content in the world, you are competing against so much other content that it's number one, really, really difficult to get your content to the right audience. And number two, they simply might not have time to look at it. So there has to be a reason for them to be looking at your content over something else, like a cat video. And, I'm not going to say go ahead and do cat videos. Those are great, but they're time sucks. So when we look at that and we look at the fact that production is really going off the charts, again, you can have the best content in the world. And if you can't find your audience and your audience can't find you, and your content doesn't resonate and doesn't help them and kind of compete for their time, they're just not going to read it. So your content really needs to have purpose. There has to be a rationale behind what you're posting, why you're posting it, and why your audience should be reading it. That's kind of where we're going to start. Okay, so let's talk about content that has a purpose. And this is something that I will admit I sometimes struggle with. Who am I targeting and what do I want them to know? Who you're targeting really ties into making your content relevant for your audience. Now, like I said, when we're talking about online content, we're talking about all sorts of different types of content because people consume content in different ways. Right? We have older audiences who might want to read a much longer blog post, down to people who are Gen Y and Gen Z, who are looking for more of a short amount of content, or they want to have a video. It just depends on what they're looking for. And what I would suggest you start doing, and I would tell everybody to do this, is you need to make a list of your digital channels. Okay, I want you to actually write down every single way that you are connecting with your customer or prospect right now. And I want you to really get down into Twitter, Facebook, press, video, whatever you do, and actually have kind of a tally of how you're engaging. And really the first thing we want to look at when we're discussing content with a purpose is who we're targeting. And we're going to go back into that list of digital channels. Okay. One of the things that I'm struggling with my new website is I want to engage different types of audiences. I want to make sure each audience has a unique and good user experience. And at the same time, I don't want to bury them with a ton of content in one location. And I'm sure a lot of you are going, yeah, I have the same issue. So one of the things that I am doing with my website and with my social channels and with my video and with my webinar, and again, I've listed all these things for my user experience exercise, my brand exercise, is I'm developing specific customer personas. Okay. the reason why we want to take a step back, and this is very old school marketing. So we're taking things that we've done traditionally in the past and we're bringing them into this digital age. So really the old becomes new again. Customer personas are, in my mind, are absolute key in understanding how you are communicating what you do and why they should care, because you're trying to decide what your ideal customer base looks like. Now, you may have only one type of person, or as your company and your products and services evolve, you might have different types of audiences that you want to target. I've identified just for my business, and I've only been having my own business since 2012. I say only, but I'm still, kind of in a young phase here. I have expanded into about 6 different types of customers, ideal customers that I want to target. And when you are doing your customer persona, you want to think about, if I had the absolute ideal type of a person that would come in, and this is the easiest person to engage, to convert, and to cross-sell, if you have other products and services, or to upsell, what would that person look like? So here is one of my customer personas. And as I was developing my different personas, I realized that I have been missing with my content opportunities to introduce other things that my company does. So again, it's very easy when you kind of are in the nitty-gritty of it to make mistakes and not step out and look at the big picture. And this is a great exercise that you should be doing. And I would say you really want to look at your customer personas every single year. Really take a step back, look at your content, look at who you're targeting and why, and really see if that's what makes sense today. Because things are changing so rapidly with technology and with online spaces and different players coming in. You really want to look at that. So let me just go through my customer persona. And this is one of several. I didn't want to bore you with a bunch of those, but this is one of my customers that I would love to see. Okay. So Sally has been promoted to director of marketing, and she's been working at her employer for 5 years. She started in customer service, and then she moved into marketing. So why is that important for me? The reason why that's important for my company and having that type of an individual, someone who has recently been promoted, who is maybe new into the digital space, and I added that sales are in slow decline, and so she needs to develop a new conversion strategy. So if she's new in the space and she's feeling a pain point right now, 2 things are happening where I can develop content to reach her. The first thing is, obviously, you're new in your role, and you may not know all the new technologies, new ways of tracking data, new ways of engaging with your prospects. So that's one thing I can sell. I can sell my digital consulting services. But the other thing, and this is something that
Lisa,
yes.
Let me interrupt you just real quickly. Are you still on the title slide, or have you changed? I'm just curious because we're all seeing the title slide.
Oh, I am on customer persona. That's so weird.
That's
strange.
Yeah.
What if I do this? Can you see it now?
Okay, I can see it now. I can see customer persona now.
Oh, strange. Okay. Well, let me go back up. So these were the items for content with a purpose. And I'm sorry. That's so strange. I don't know if it's because I was on, the actual slide review. But let me go back up here just so everyone can see.
Okay, so now we're seeing more content that we can handle.
Right. I just backed up a little bit. So again, these were the stats that I reviewed earlier. Okay, and then we talk about content shock. Okay. I love this visual. That's why I wanted to put it in. And again, this is
something in content production. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Content needs to have a purpose.
Can you do full screen on this by any chance? What did we try that? And
I did, and you said you couldn't see anything. I did full screen, and
that's
you said
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not,
So
I mean,
we'll
I
just,
can do this. Maybe,
yeah,
is that a little easier to see?
it makes it a little larger. Yeah. So
Okay.
that we'll do that. And I know a lot of, I attend to a lot of webinars that people run into that same thing, and there's a way around it, but let's not get into that right now.
Okay. That's not a problem. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay. So that's not a problem. So I'm on customer persona. So let me just back up a little bit. So again, I'm looking at this customer from the viewpoint of how can I sell digital consulting services? And again, when I was writing this persona out, the one item that I wasn't thinking about and that I missed is because she's recently been promoted and because she is kind of green in her role, there's an ability for me to upsell my training services where I can help her with best practices. I can help her with data tracking. I can see if there's an ability to come in and actually help her set up her data tracking and her dashboard so she can really be able to tell whether or not her activities are working. So when we develop these customer personas, we really want to make them a little bit more broad base, and then we can dig in to see what makes sense and what items she might be interested in, which would then drive her experience on my website and what content I would be developing for this customer. And again, if we look at our list of digital channels that we've hopefully listed out, and the reason why I would tell you that you really want to get very nitty gritty and talk about, Flickr, YouTube, Pinterest, any and all social channels and any and all digital channels is because not every digital channel is going to work for every single potential prospect or customer group that you have. Now, for this individual, she might be interested in my YouTube channel where, I would have some webinars on it or even just a short video that kind of talks about some tips. So if you think about what she's going to be looking for and how she's going to be consuming content, it helps you determine what areas should I be working in and what types of content should I be providing. And again, the great thing that you have with the digital space is that you're able to look at the data once you've done this and see whether or not what you thought was going to happen happens. You can look at your assumptions and see whether or not your assumptions actually made sense. And then you can retailer your content as you're learning about your customer. Now, the other thing that I talked about, and let me go back up, is what do I want them to know? And again, that goes back into your customer persona and making your content relevant for your audience. So if I know that this individual works in, let's say, hospitality, because that's one of the industries that I target, my wording would be a little bit different. I would be talking about guest experience. I would be talking about property. I would be using key buzzwords that she can relate to. If she were in, let's say, higher ed, I would be talking about enrollments. I would be talking about student experience. So again, it's looking at your personas as you develop them and really starting to drive content that's relevant to that specific audience. Now, again, there's a balance, right? You have so much information that you'd like to provide, but you can't dump it on them all at once because they're just not going to consume it. There's just no way they're going to be able to take in all that information. So you also have to think about what you want to tell them, what journey they're going to have within your digital world, as it were, and how you can help them develop their own path so that they are understanding what it is that you do and why they should care, how it relates to them. Okay, so let me stop for a second, and because this is a big piece. And I hate to say this, but if you're going to take nothing away from this webinar, if you can do just this, I feel like you would start to get a handle on what your content is doing and how you can start to develop relevancy. To me, I feel like this is one of the biggest pieces that everybody misses because we're so hell-bent on just putting out a bunch of content that we don't back up and go, well, who is this content for? And at the end of the day, what do I want them to even know about my products and services? So, Tim, are there any questions so far, or can I keep
No,
going?
not from our audience. I would like a comment a little bit because you
Sure.
talk about who your target audience is. In general terms, when I blog, I'm always thinking of someone who is the trade show marketing manager for a company, whether it's a small company or a medium company, and perhaps in some cases a larger company like probably not as big as Nike or Reebok or something like that, but certainly smaller companies that have sales of 100 to 200 million and less. And so I always think of, okay, does this content have a meaning to them? And I also think about the clients that I've had and the people I've met that I would like to be clients in that market. They're all trade show exhibit managers. And generally speaking, certainly there are people that don't fit this, but most of them are women in their mid 30s to mid 40s, I'm saying 60 to 65%. The rest are men about that same age. Certainly there are some that are close to 50, 55. There are some younger ones, not too many younger ones, but so I kind of have that image in my mind. I haven't done a lot of research other than mental notes, and I take a look at who I actually speak to and makes those decisions. Now, these people aren't necessarily the final decision maker on it, but they're the ones that are tasked with doing all the managing of the trade show and okay, we're going to do a new booth and we've got to gather the information. They are not the people that make the final decision, but they're the people I end up dealing with. And so is that a good way to look at that from my standpoint, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I would advise is, so if there's an area where you feel like there could be potential growth, like in your male, let's say it's males who are 25 to 35, a younger male audience, is there a little bit of content you can start developing now, testing and targeting, to get them to recognize your brand, start to actually have some kind of a following with that group? Because it takes a long time for people to start really following your content. I mean, the one stat I read was you have to write about 50 blogs before your traffic generation actually increases to a statistically significant level, to about 30%.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of content, and that's a long time.
Yeah, and so that's when you mentioned back there, you kind of get buried in the content you're taking. You just got to put the stuff out there without, a lot of us don't think about what we're doing. But I do create a lot of content, but I also am very conscious of what the end result might be. That a lot of people won't see it that I think should, but people that do are going to see it. They're going to come to the blog and they're going to go, because I've had a lot of people say, "Man, you have a lot of great content here," but there's not huge numbers of people that do that. So I always wonder, make sure I get to the right people. And for your comment to target, 25 to 35 or younger, male, for instance, is something I hadn't really thought of. So that'll give me something to mull over.
Right. And another stat that I read, which I thought was interesting, is that they're estimating by 2020, customers will manage 85% of their relationships without ever talking to another person.
Jeez.
Okay, so that means that they're getting all of their information digitally.
Yeah.
So if your content isn't really targeted and personalized, you're going to totally miss them. I mean, if you're banking on them picking up the phone and calling you, it's probably not going to happen.
Interesting. We could talk about that forever. I want you to proceed, though. I think this is good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. So let's go back. So when we're talking about relevancy and targeting, what we're really driving towards when we're developing this is we really want to have not only genuine engagement, but emotional engagement. We really want to make sure that we are looking at really developing a relationship with our prospects online. And, as much as, it can be difficult because it is a digital space, I still think that there is a way to drive that human element within your digital content. Again, I think a lot of times we make content very generalized, very, we almost don't want to offend anybody, so it relates to no one, and people simply don't have the time to read content like that if it doesn't pull an emotional trigger for them and help them to really start to understand who your company is. And this is especially important when you're looking at targeting a younger audience, when you're looking at Gen Y and Gen Z. And when you're looking at Gen Y and Gen Z, you really need to start developing content that people can truly engage with and that can really understand your content. So, and I'm sorry, can you hold on? I'm sorry, hold on one second. Hold on.
Maybe she's got a cat crawling over everything. Who knows what's going on? But it's been one of those days. Maybe I should say one of those weeks. If you've just joined us, you've got a webinar featuring Lisa Apolinski of Three Dog Right, and she's
sorry about that.
Content with purpose. And Lisa's back. All right.
Sorry about that. I had someone knocking on my door. I'm like, no, leave me alone. So again, when you're developing genuine engagement, when you're developing engagement that actually speaks to your audience, they're developing a relationship with you. And that's the other thing that I think a lot of companies are struggling with. Before, we could have a relationship with Nike, we could have a relationship with Amazon, and we had this loyalty to the company itself. And we're now at the point where, our audience is not looking for engagement with a company. They're looking for engagement with a humanistic type of approach. And again, this goes back to Gen Y and Gen Z, where they're very, very suspicious of those types of individuals that are just pushing company information and product information, and there's no real genuine or emotional engagement with it. So that's but again, if you're, and I'm going to go back because this is so important, if you are driving to a specific customer, if you are really thinking about who your audience is and where you are going to and and what you want them to understand about you, then you're really able to think about that human, emotional, and genuine engagement, and you can really start to look at how things are working because you're looking at that genuine engagement. And again, it's with Content Shock the way it is right now, and I really think we're like just absolutely into it at this point. If they don't feel like there is a reason to read your content, if there's not a reason to take their precious time and look at what you're saying, they're just going to go someplace else. And the great thing about it, I'd have to say, even though Content Shock is horrible and we're all kind of struggling with this, it's a level playing field now, if you really look at it. Big businesses are struggling just like small businesses. And the individuals and the businesses that can really push for that genuine engagement are the ones that are going to really see success moving forward. Okay.
Yep.
Another item that shocks me that people still don't do this is that there has to be a visual and or an audio component to your content. And I pulled up a bunch of stats on that. Content with relevant images, and again, relevant, not just anything. Don't put a baby up there or a puppy. Relevant images, you get 94% more views than content without relevant images. That's unbelievable. 94% more views. And audio content, I think, is an area that hasn't gotten completely saturated yet, but people are starting to catch up. YouTube is the second largest search engine. So videos are something that if you haven't done before, even for like 30 seconds, I think it is an absolute key driver to your online content strategy. And you can use the videos to help to gain brand recognition, brand engagement, and some kind of a relevant emotional engagement with your audience, and then drive them to other content that you have, whether it's your website, your blogs, social platforms, PR, what have you. To me, it's key. And if you were looking to, you could also add audio content within your blogs or web pages. And the reason why I say that is audio content can be added with minimal impact on page speed. So again, I'm thinking about my user experience and how they are consuming my content. And if a page takes more than 2.5 seconds to load, the abandon rate goes up by, I think, about 60%. So you don't have a lot of time.
Are we still on the content with purpose page? I just want to make sure we're following you correctly. Okay, good.
Yes. So that's another area where you really want to, get creative, but still relevant. And if you have a visual or some kind of audio, the other nice thing is then you can repurpose it for different digital channels. So Instagram, you can have a photo, and then maybe Facebook, you'd have a little video clip, and then you'd be driving them to other content, maybe a blog or your web page or a press release. And press releases are now starting to include video. So to me, it's a great medium to start to explore. I'm all about video. The next piece that I actually did not talk about when we were at SKU, but I think is another really, really key one, is you have to market your content like you market your company. You have to really push out what type of, the same type of engagement that you're doing for your own organization. And that's another key piece that I think a lot of companies miss. They think, oh, if I just publish it and put it out there, everyone will read it. And that is so not the case. Market, and market it, again, as if you're marketing your own company. You have to have a good subject line or tagline. Your tweets have to be engaging. Your video has to be pretty clean. There has to be a call to action at the end of your content. A lot of things that you have done within other channels that you're used to, like email or just driving traffic to your website or doing cold calls, you have to bring in some of that traditional marketing into your digital content, and you have to market it pretty much the same way. So yeah, it's an added hassle. But again, if you go back to the stats that I talked about, that you get 3 times as many leads and it costs nearly or more than half than traditional marketing, it behooves you to really be pushing your content. And what I believe is that a lot of companies are not doing this. So if you do it, that just gives you an added advantage. If you're really strategizing around how you market and share your digital content. I think you can really push yourself above other companies that you're competing against. I'm going to be moving on to pitfalls. Are there any questions at this point before I move on? Any questions from any of our audience members? Tim?
I see none in the chat room. Are you seeing the chat box, by the way?
No, I'm just I'm just keeping with my presentation.
Gotcha. No,
I don't want to mess around.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you made an interesting point about people not being ready. I talked to a lot of people on the trade show floor and about various things, social media being one of them. And there are so many companies that say, yeah, I should be doing more in that space. And so they know it's there. They hang out on their own, but it's just, I think most people don't have the bandwidth to do all this. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges. If we could solve that one, we'd be rich, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about pitfalls of content, because there's a lot. And there are still a lot of people doing these, which just shocks the hell out of me. I think one of the reasons why content shock has really kind of shooken up the digital space is because before you could be really lazy with your content and you'd still get people reading it and sharing it and going to your website and getting leads and ultimately getting revenue. And we're at the point now where you have to really start cleaning up what you're doing if you want to see any kind of true content engagement and to have your content actually do some work for you. The first one that again, I think it's so funny is that people think it's going to be fast and easy. Just post a blog, do a couple tweets and everyone should just show up at my website, right? No. Like I said, you have to write at least 50 blogs before your blog traffic generation increases to 30%. So you have to have really a history of content. You have to have a library of content that people can access. And as they see more content, they will start to engage with it more often. Another issue, and this again goes back to that customer persona, is there is no consistency in who you're targeting and what you want them to know. What do you want to be known for in the digital space? That's really the key. Are you looking to be an expert? Are you looking to lead the industry that you're in? Look at Snapple. We're number 3. What do you want to be known for? And if you're not driving towards that and driving towards it with all of your digital channels, and again, that's why I behoove you to write down every single digital channel that you know of and are using, and to see, am I being consistent with all of these? Or am I saying one thing one place and then something else someplace else? Because if you're doing that and you're sending a mixed message, people are going to be like, well, I'm confused. I don't have time for that. And they're going to move on to somebody else. And that takes us to point number 3. So you have to build your content. You have to start to really build an arsenal of content that people can access. And you have to share like crazy to get people to read it. The good thing that I can tell you is because content stays in the digital space forever, if you are staying relevant, if you are focusing on who you want to talk to and what you want them to know about you, once they start to look at your content, they will go back into your library and read other pieces. I still get comments from blogs that I wrote 3 or 4 years ago that people are just discovering now. But again,
yeah, I think it's interesting to me that someone will share on Twitter a link to a post that I wrote last summer.
Oh, yeah.
That happens fairly regularly. It's something
Absolutely.
From several months ago. It's interesting.
Right. And don't forget, it may not be new for you, but it's new for them. And that's all that matters. And if they have been buried with other crap content and they finally found something good, They're like, hooray, I found something, in this mess. They want to share it and they want to continue to read it. And that's also why you have to be strategic with what you're developing for your content, because if they have one good post and then they go back into your library and they find other posts that are not so great, or aren't consistent, or a different audience member, it's going to turn them off as well. So you want to really try to build your arsenal so that even if they go back into the history, the experience still is the same and it's a positive one. Now, or actually several of the items that I think can turn into money pits, and please do not misunderstand me when I talk about SEO fixation and buying your content. I know sometimes you have to do these things. I know it can be a necessary evil. My concern with these items and things that I tell my customers and my clients, if you're only fixated on SEO, if all you're doing is trying to jam a bunch of keywords into your content and you think that's going to get people to read it, I'm here to tell you that that's not going to happen. It may get people to find it, and Google is changing their algorithms all the time. So what worked last week may not work today, but if they get to it and then it's content that's totally irrelevant, that's clearly just a bunch of keywords, that doesn't give them any additional information, that doesn't help them to do their job, live their life, build their dreams, whatever it is that you're trying to help them to do, they're just going to not read you. And if they see other content from you, they're going to basically ignore it. And again, I think SEO certainly has its place, and it's getting harder and harder to do good SEO, just because, again, there's so much content out there. You have a lot of competing sources, and Google is now using sharing and relevancy and engagement as part of their algorithm. So again, if people aren't sharing your content and don't feel like it's relevant, all the SEO keywords in the world are not going to fix that. Buying your content is another thing that is tricky. I understand that not everybody is a writer. I completely understand that. And this is really where video can come in that can help you with your content engagement. You may not be the best writer in the world, but if you are passionate about a subject, if you are an expert in a subject, if you really want to have people understand some type of subject, some kind, your products and services, what you bring to the equation, and you do a 30-second video and it's you talking, you'd be surprised at how genuine and interesting that engagement can be. A lot of times people will have a bunch of writers and they'll hire a bunch of writers to do a bunch of content. And again, it lacks consistency. It becomes very diluted because the writer doesn't want to offend anybody or doesn't really know the subject matter as well as the person they're writing it for. And it can be a double-edged sword. If you're not sure if you're a good writer, if you're not sure how to go about building content, start with something small. I mean, there's no shame in that. Start with tweeting. Start with doing some Facebook posts. Start with, like I said, recording some audio or video and seeing how you're sharing it and how it's getting interacted with, and then build from there. And you might surprise yourself as to what you develop and getting your message out. If you need someone to maybe review what you've written and make it so that there's no grammatical errors and that there's no punctuation errors and stuff like that, that's okay. But I think I really feel that sometimes when you hire writers to write your content for you, it can be a little dodgy. Another thing that you can do, and I actually was I just read yesterday a blog on this about whether or not guest blogging is appropriate. and is good for content engagement. I personally have guest blogged. I think it gives a different viewpoint as long as you can, again, tie it into your overall message and have whatever the guest blog is be relevant to your audience. And you might have to have a conversation with the guest blogger, and that's okay. Like, I can write about anything in the world. If I'm guest blogging and someone tells me, hey, I really want you to focus on the guest experience in a resort as it relates to proximity marketing, I'm fine with that. I would love to have that kind of narrow type of a subject matter. You just have to have that conversation and see, again, what's appropriate and relevant for your audience, because it's all about the audience and user experience. It has to be, because that's what you're going for. One more item that I added on here, because I've been seeing a lot of comments around this, and actually Mark Schaefer did a LinkedIn post asking about this a couple of weeks ago, and he got so many comments, and it was kind of crazy. The question was, is blogging dead? And there were so many people on that comment section that said, oh yeah, blogging's totally dead. No one reads blogs anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I really think this has to do with lazy content. I think that if you have strong content and you're sharing and you're developing your voice, I think blogging is far from dead. And I actually pulled a bunch of stats that just came out for people who are emailing. And people have also said emailing is dead, so go figure. For those who are using email marketing, companies that blog get twice as much traffic from their email as those that don't. Just by having additional content on their site, their emails are more effective. That's crazy. B2B marketers who use blogs generate 67% more leads. That's insanity. The most active, and this is, to me, this is the kicker. The most active demographic for blogging is 21 to 35-year-olds. And they tally over 50% of the total blogging population. So if they're blogging, it means they're reading blogs. And that's your future customer base. I mean, you can't get around that. I think that, again, blogging has to be added into your total view of your digital channels. And you have to see what's relevant and how it's working. And quite honestly, if blogging were dead, LinkedIn wouldn't have launched last year this massive platform to allow people to blog on their site. And they're genius. They have how many millions of people who are on LinkedIn? And if even 1% of that group blogs consistently, that is all this extra content with extra views and extra viewpoints that LinkedIn is getting to drive to their platform. And that's the other thing. Whatever your digital content is, where do you want your constituent population to go? And my comment for that every single time is you want them to go to your website to learn more about your products and services. And when they go to your website, the content there has to be good so that they take the next step, which is, and you can fill in the blank here, call you, email you, show up at your store, whatever. But you have to be driving them towards something. And to me, everything really should be driving towards your virtual presence, which is your website. Your website still is your ultimate virtual presence online. I don't know any company who currently is in business who doesn't have some kind of a website. There's absolutely no excuse. And if you're using the content appropriately and you're driving towards your website, as long as you're driving traffic in the right place, and again, you're helping them with their user journey, I really feel that blogging absolutely has a place. But it's interesting that a lot of Fortune 50 companies are abandoning blogging, probably because they're not using it right. They're just throwing out a bunch of stuff, hoping that it works. They're not sharing. They're not seeing the numbers, so they're like, we'll do something else. But on the flip side, if you're competing against those companies and you are blogging and you are developing that personal and human engagement and that connection, you could be pushing yourself ahead of your competitors. So to me, that's a win.
And I think, Lisa, one of the comments I would make on that is that I've seen so many, and I've looked for corporate blogs, and most of them really are used as, many of them, I should say, not most of them, are used as platforms for press releases, and we are really good at this, and we won this award, and look how great we are, as opposed to answering people's questions, solving people's problems, and helping them in their situations, because that's the kind of content people really want to read. Is how do you, we have a problem. This blog post lets me solve that problem.
Exactly.
As opposed to here's a press release on how great their corporate guy is who got a new bonus or a new car or whatever the heck they got from their, they got a piece of jewelry from some corporation. So yeah, I think that you really have to try and solve people's problems, and you have to know what their problems are first. So you got to listen to your audience and figure out what those problems are, and then do your best to solve them. I found as a blogger, I learned so much by addressing those situations that, I should check into that. That's something that I need to answer because I don't know. And once you find the answer, then you become the expert. So
right, exactly. And another thing that I love when I blog is it starts a conversation. Yeah. So I don't have all the answers, and if you meet another consultant that says they do, that should scare you. But, for me, if I'm having a conversation and we're talking about what's going on and we're talking about our different viewpoints and what we're seeing, to me, everyone wins. And it's a teachable moment because I not only am teaching, but I'm learning at the same time.
I'm going to go ahead and switch screens away from you. I think we should be able to hear you, but I'm going to take away your.
Can I just?
Yes. Oh, I was going to ask you about that actually. So
yeah, I just had one more slide.
This is how to get a hold of Lisa.
This is how to get a hold of me. If you have a question, if you want to discuss your issue further, or tell me, this was really interesting, or I don't agree with this, and let's talk about it. I would love to hear from you. This is a bunch of different ways to get a hold of me. You can email me, hit me up on Twitter. You can call me, and you can check out my website. I don't know when my new website's going to launch because, again, it's such a loving thing to build your website and go through these exercises. And
it is. It's interesting.
It's just great.
Right. All right, so I've taken the screen back, and I think I'm on screen. I have a face there that looks like I'm talking and everything. So, I've made some notes during your thing, and a couple of comments I just want to make. You said you should write down all of the online outlets you have. Okay, so I've got a blog. I'm on YouTube. I've got a company website. I've got a landing page for the webinars. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. These are all company and trade show guy related. LinkedIn, Pinterest, and of course I have the exhibit design search, which is my online search tool for exhibits. And so that's 10. That's a lot to keep up with. And I admit that there's no way I can keep up with all of them as well as I'd like to, but I do create content for all of them on at least a fairly regular basis, or at least share throughout those platforms. Did you have Google Plus as part of your social channel? I'm on Google Plus. I did not write that down. I'm hardly ever there. I go there and I don't know what it is. I just don't see a lot of activity there. And the people that I tend to follow, it's not something that really suits me. And I've had this conversation. This is a long conversation we should have later. But Google Plus does not do a whole lot for me. And I know that some people get some good things out of it and others don't. Okay, no, that's totally cool. I mean, one more comment, and that is, you talked about video. Facebook Live is now, I think, anybody can go live on Facebook with video. And there's certainly some well-known people that do that on a regular basis. But also the other thing that I see is a lot of people doing, and I've used this a couple times, which is and I can't even think of the name of the platform, the platform where they can go video live. It's my brain's, I can't grab that word, that little video sharing platform. You can just go on live, and I deleted the app from my phone because I was traveling. I can't think of what it is.
I can't think of it either. I know what you're saying.
Oh
I'm
no,
having
I
the
feel,
same moment.
I feel silly not coming up with that. But
That's okay.
Lisa, thank you very much. This has been great content. This, of course, is going to be posted on blog, and I'll let you know. And I know that there are a lot of people that actually wanted to be here, but know that we're going to replay it, so they'll get to view this later. And again, appreciate the great content. We could go on for another hour, I'm sure, but we've reached the top of the hour here at 11. So we'll have to do this again.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I love these.
All right. Lisa, thanks a lot. I'm going to stop the broadcast now, and I'll catch up with you later.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.